Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, out there in Blog Talk Radio land. Welcome to Open Money. I'm Ernie Jacob, and I'm with Michael Linton. We're in the Comox Valley. Today is Wednesday. No, is it Wednesday? Yes, it is. It's Wednesday. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, Pacific Daylight Time. So, and today we're going to be talking about monetizing Facebook and various other social networking platforms, what Open Money can do for Facebook and the social networking web portals. Michael, do you want to tell us what this is about?
Yes, I'd love to tell you what this is about. Trouble is, I don't really know what this is about yet. This is a totally new area that's opening up for us. The relationship between Open Money and the emerging social networking portals, of which the most obvious at this point is Facebook. MySpace was the industry standard for some years, but it's recently been totally overtaken by the Facebook community, which is growing very quickly and seems in some respects to have most accurately identified what the Internet makes possible. The Internet made possible things like general email. It made things like the web possible. It's a technical platform, and on that technical platform we build applications that end users find help them in some way. Now, it might be they help them to find their TV schedule, or they help them to find a map of the bus routes of their city. It might be all sorts of instant information connection that way. And a lot of it has been from one to many, the same model as broadcasting. I have my website, and I expect you to be excited and come to it and buy my books or pharmaceuticals or whatever they are. So it's the source puts out, and the hope is that many people will read it and become excited. And so the Internet has, for perhaps 10 years, been driven by that form of application. Recently, the propagation of broadband, the interest people have in putting up web videos, sound bites, all sorts of smaller applications, has led to communication as a thing in itself, finding each other, connecting. LinkedIn is the biggest business site probably that business and entrepreneurial and investors tend to identify themselves on the LinkedIn site so that they can find each other, they can mutually refer, they can become networked and able to hear about the next thing happening before other people do. So what LinkedIn did in the business sector, Facebook is doing in the social sector, particularly with people below the age of 30, although the fastest growing demographic on Facebook is people over 50. Big changes are happening out here. And the core of the discussion I'd like to have today, and I stress it's a discussion, Ernie and I are trying to work out what this is all about, and we invite anybody who's also interested to get in touch with us and join in. The core of it is a presentation that was made recently at a conference in San Francisco area on graphing social patterns and 3 keys to the monetization of Facebook. The protagonist of this event is a man called Dave McClure, who has a long history in the Internet, insofar as anybody does have a long history in the Internet. He's active in was active in PayPal and is now an independent venture entrepreneur with interests in microcredit, in international development on that basis, and in Facebook as a potential vehicle for this and many other things. And in his own blog at 500hats.typepad.com, which you can also reach through his own site, which is 500hats.com. You go to his blogs, and in a recent blog on the 11th of October, and the link is on the chat associated with this site, and we'll put it up on our notes as well. There is a 45-minute video which he describes as, without a doubt, this was the most fun, crazy, 90-mile-an-hour roller coaster, good time panel session I've ever had the pleasure to be on. It was a blast. And I'd agree that it's one of the most productive and interactive and powerful sessions I've ever seen.
I thought so. I thought so too. There were some very, very interesting exchanges, especially between Jason Calacanis and McClure.
Yeah,
and
the
that's
protagonist
actually,
on this. Yeah,
I just wanted to point out that one of the things that Calacanis said when you said Facebook is has got the leading edge, Calacanis says that Facebook to MySpace, and which is why Facebook is opening up its website for applications.
Yes, he makes the point that that almost all the activity on the web has commercial driving behind it. At one point, people were dismissing AOL as old hat, but he pointed out that AOL is still turning in billions of dollars of revenue, while as the new exciting things which may be valued at billions of dollars in their potential stock market and whatever, their actual revenue stream is tiny by comparison with AOL. And
but then Facebook is new on the scene.
It is, but the question that was preoccupying this panel was, well, okay, it's new and exciting, but can it make money? Can it really make money? They know it can sell. They know that somebody wanted to buy Facebook, they'd have to sign some sort of a check for, well, more than $15 billion, because $15 billion has reportedly been already rejected by the private owners of Facebook. The theory is that they're more likely to go for expanding their potential and do an IPO, a stock market release, and that they might get an awful lot of money. But nobody's quite clear why they should have a lot of money, except that they're the new exciting thing. They're the sort of the second generation of the .com era. And
especially since there are a number of other competitors like MySpace and Google, and of course they don't mention Yahoo at all. Interestingly, I didn't catch them saying anything about Yahoo. Did you?
Well, there's only one reference made to Yahoo, as I recall. I should add that we have transcribed major proportions of this conversation, and we will be publishing that transcript, incomplete transcript, a selective transcript, only the pieces I'm interested in. And in that transcript, there is one mention of Yahoo as people who couldn't afford to buy it in the present circumstances, or it would not pay for them to buy this. But that's the only mention of Yahoo. There's a lot of mention of Google, because Google has clearly taken note of the growth of Facebook, and that the different modality of people's use on Facebook is clearly attracting a lot more immediacy than the traditional style of Google. If I'm going to talk about Google as traditional, it's been here for 4 or 5 years now at this level, so I guess we can think of it as an old industry standard. Well, a month ago, and it's referred to in this podcast, linked off our site here, the 500 Hats one. A month ago, there was at a TechCrunch conference an announcement that Google is on November the 5th of this year going to introduce a new application interface regime that will allow people building applications to piggyback on Google to be much more integrated with the database and with the facilities of Google. And this is clearly an attempt to to keep ahead of Facebook, not to let Facebook steal the main ground. It's a strategic approach to using Google's immense distribution to stay ahead of what Facebook is beginning to bite into.
Well,
and Google is identified
they all make the
that way.
point that Facebook does especially Dave McClure says that Facebook does a pretty crappy job of monetization. Those are his words. A pretty crappy job of monetization. Whereas Google actually does much better, and that's all to do with advertising.
Well, and if you check through the ideas of monetization that the panelists are bouncing backwards and forwards, they virtually all revert down to commercial participation, either at an advertising level or at a stimulation, sponsorship, viral marketing style. What can business do to get into Facebook that is equivalent to what they're currently doing on Google? And the picture people have is advertising, is page deliveries that include a little reference to this, camping gear manufacturer or this ski wear retailer or whatever your page on Google, your search or your activity on Google is dealing with. Google will give you context-related advertising, and the advertisers pay, and they pay by the number of page views. They are paid by or Google is paid by the advertisers for the number of page views. It's paid for click-throughs. When somebody clicks on one of these things and goes, there's another revenue to Google. Well, Facebook isn't doing quite this yet, and the presumption is that this is the only way to go. When these people on the panel talk about the economy or the economy of the Internet or the commerce of the Internet, they are definitely talking about the meat world meeting the virtual world. It's still business as usual. They're looking at these communities of engagement and interaction that are being created, and they're looking at it from outside and saying, how can we as corporate America or corporate world sell something to these people, and how can Facebook get a slice of this so that it can sell itself to the market? It's all back to the money. And I guess our point as open money practitioners is that we're seeing the quality of connection, the form of the patterns that are emerging on Facebook. The fact that I can go up there and say, I went to this school, I went to this university, I work with these people, I've joined these clubs, I know these things, this is some of my email contacts, and the Facebook platform will connect me potentially with all sorts of other people who share some or other of those attributes. Now this is, I described it as sort of like the developer fluid on an old photographic negative. You remember those things, Ernie? Old photographic negatives?
Old, yes, I used to play with them in my darkroom.
Yeah, chemicals in the darkroom made you the man you are today.
It is. I did a lot of snorting of chemicals in the darkroom for sure.
Oh well. So what happens when you put the exposed negative into the developer fluid is that the image begins to emerge. We begin to see on the negative the picture that was recorded there when the camera was exposing. Now the developer fluid is what makes us aware to us, shows us what's there. And I'm looking at these Facebook, social networking, the LinkedIn, all the blogosphere, the cross-referencing of the RSS, what's known as the open web. The facilities that are collectively being identified as of the Web 2.0 generation, the maturing of the Web 1.0, which was just push Web 2 is connect. And it's a different form of connectivity than the world has ever known before. Previously, our connectivity was associated through face-to-face communications, networks, localization, or through institutional. Like if I was part of a health organization in Botswana, I might know people from a health organization in Argentina or Switzerland because of our institutional hierarchical connectivities. My organization talks to your organization. Now, what the Internet makes it possible is for anybody, anywhere in the Internet accessible world, and that's a big one these days, anybody on the Internet can, in principle, find connections with anybody else on the Internet. Simply because
speaking of connections, people can connect with us right now through the Internet, through BlogTalkRadio blogtalkradio.com/openmoney. But of course, if anybody's listening, they already know that. And they should know about the chat. If anybody wants to join in, ask a question, leave a comment, say hello, or join the conversation, drop us a note on the web chat. If you are listening this by podcast, this is Blog Talk Radio Open Money. And our emails are Michael is mwl@openmoney.org. I'm Ernie, that's EY@openmoney.org. And we'd love to hear from you if you happen to catch this on the podcast. Today we're talking about monetizing Facebook and other social networks on the web. And Michael is now, well, we're going through this program that with Jason Calacanis and David McClure and several others.
Yeah, just let me run down the cast of characters, the unusual suspects, if you like. The conference was in San Jose a couple of weeks ago, and it was about Facebook and other such pattern creators and how they as the word is graph. Another word might be map. Social patterns, how they reveal and emerge and offer social patterns that people can work with. Now, the people that were talking here were David McClure, also Rodney Rumford, who's active in the analysis of Facebook. Then two big hitters in the world. Not that Dave McClure is small at all, and Rumford certainly covered a lot of ground, but Jason Calacanis, who currently operates a development called Mahalo, which is a search engine designed to improve upon what Google does, because it will be beyond search engine optimization, that is, beyond all these jokers who say they can get you to the top of the Google page. Mahalo will be not susceptible to the same search engine optimization distortions. Calacanis has had a long history. In one stage, I believe he was chief executive of the Netscape project. So he knows his way around. I may be wrong about that, but get it right yourself if you want to follow it up. I'm sure there's plenty on this site will tell you all about him. A fourth participant was Robert Scoble, who's perhaps the most active and, I was to say profligate or blogger on the planet at the moment. He blogs extraordinarily frequently and has a very high follower subscription. He claims to scan several thousand blogs a day, or to be receiving the feeds and filtering them through. And he's worked with Microsoft, and he's no longer working with Microsoft, but he's pretty prominent. The whole thing was moderated by Mike Arrington, who is another blogger whose primary site is TechCrunch. And a very sharp bunch of people, all on the same table, all talking the same stuff. And they're all talking about money. Now, I listened to this first through, and I found it very stimulating, very exciting, very a sharp-edged, clear-cut, contentious discussion with some very strong positions presented and some good arguments in all directions. But I kept thinking that this was a bit like the person who found the secrets of the universe. You know, he'd been meditating for 20 years, or he'd been to the end of the earth, or whatever. However he'd done it, he'd found the secrets of the universe. And what was he going to do? He was going to go into the stock market to get rich. You know, it's like there's a point at which you say, just a minute, what you're looking at is far, far bigger than what you're seeing here. They've seen the emergence of the reality of what Internet makes possible. And I really think Facebook is one of the first really powerful indications of what connectivity really means. It's not using it very well. I think it's crass in many ways. I think it's pretty damn stupid. Apparently one of the most exciting things on Facebook at the moment is to get involved in a virtual food fight. Go figure. You're throwing virtual donuts.
Calacanis had, yes. He said, and they were talking about developing these applications for Facebook and trying to and making money. And Calacanis says the page views of throwing food at each other are worth nothing. People don't even look at the ads. They're worth nothing. People just flow right through because what they're interested in Facebook is connecting.
Yeah, it was interesting. Calacanis' attitude to the trivial apps, and most of the apps on Facebook are pretty trivial. Learn to be a zombie, become a pirate, throw food. Now, his point was, and his line was, they're trivial. People don't even look at the ads. Now, this is the same sort of complaints that the major networks are making about their TV coverage these days. People aren't reading the ads. People aren't seeing the ads. We can't sell advertising space because the medium has all changed in some way. Well, this is the same discussion. Calacanis' perception of Facebook and anything else is a place to sell real estate, virtual real estate. If you want to appear on the page that we are supporting through Facebook or Mahalo for sure, or 1,000 other things, expect to pay for it. And the only measure that he seemed to be dealing with of the value of an application was what could it do to enhance the advertising revenues of the corporations who could use this medium to peddle soap or cars or media or technology or whatever to other people. And this is a fully understandable position. By God, it makes money. This is where the billion-dollar deals are.
It's that form of money that they're talking about. It's conventional, normal, centrally issued money that they're all competing for. Everybody's trying to get their best big piece of the pie.
So they're all standing around there saying, we've got this exciting, interactive, to and fro package emerging. How do we monetize it? And the open money community is standing around saying, well, it is money. The communication itself is the basis for a myriad of forms of monetization that can be in Facebook's interests and purposes. It can be in the interests of the corporate retailers or whatever who are trying to peddle their stuff through it. But equally, it can be entirely independent of those things and be simply the expression of the value that the participants find in each other. Now,
that's it. First and foremost, it's what the participants can do with it. And that, in turn, will drive the business participation.
It's sort of like when they first found oil wells if you were drilling for oil so that you could make a better coal mine, it would be sort of missing the point. And this is really what's going on here, is that the people who have become prominent in the internet as successful entrepreneurial developers, creators, have done so inside the context of serving commercial, industrial, media of retailing, advertising, marketing. So that's what they believe in. That's their habit. They are the coal miners who would not have understood what an oil well was. And similarly, if somebody comes up with a renewable energy capacity now, solar or wind, and says, oh great, we can use this to build better drilling machines to get more oil out of the tar sands or something like that, then they would be similarly going backwards into a historic situation rather than forwards into new.
It's like the horseless... like turning corn into ethanol, into fuel.
Yes. It's a regressive
there's
idea.
A brilliant idea.
Yeah. I mean, when the first automobiles came out, they were characterized as horseless carriages. You took what people knew was that a carriage was a vehicle with wheels, and it was pulled by horses or oxen or something, but it was definitely, that's what it was. And what an automobile was, technically it means a self-moving device.
Self-powered.
Auto being of itself in this respect. So here you have the automobile, but people can only see it as a carriage that hasn't got horses. They didn't even see it as a carriage with an engine, because an engine did not exist for them. They couldn't comprehend it. But what made the horseless carriage possible was that the internal combustion engine, or the steam engine, as there were plenty of steam engines with external combustion operating at that time, but they were the motive force that made it possible to have a carriage without a horse. Well, do you focus on the horselessness of the carriage, or do you focus on the engine that makes the whole thing real? This panel, in my view, are back in the horseless carriage era. I think they're just missing the point, and continued to do so. Now, I don't want to try and decouple or deconstruct all the discussion that went on there. Particularly, I'm interested in following through the argument that Dave McClure was stressing and restating on a regular basis, and closed out with. When the discussion was coming to the end, it was about whether Facebook was going to stay as a progressive, open, and attractive platform for developers to get going on, or whether they were going to be seduced by the shareholder imperative. We can make lots of money if we can sell ourselves in the stock market. We can sell ourselves in the stock market if we promise the shareholders we're going to make lots of money. How are we going to make lots of money? Any way we like, basically by controlling the situation. And that was Kalkanis' analysis, that MySpace is still comparatively closed. And the reason it is that they've got ahead of the game and they're making good money. And they probably see that Facebook is going to eclipse them completely in due course, but they might as well pick the fruit off the tree as it falls over. So they're really just staying closed and not encouraging the distribution of new ideas in the same way that Facebook is. The concern is that Facebook, as soon as it becomes more successful, will go in the same route. And what Dave McClure is arguing is that Facebook would be shooting itself in the foot to do that. It's got to stay open and stay wide. And he believes that Google and potentially Yahoo and a dozen other platforms that might be associated with this at different times, they will keep Facebook honest. He stresses the need for competition in the virtual space, the platform provider, the attraction for developers of apps, that if that is kept open and competitive, then no single platform will become the dominant one, and no single platform will then obstruct everything for everybody else, because that is the tendency. What was it that Scoble said?
He says that Facebook is re-leveling the playing field, and he hopes that keeps happening.
Exactly. I mean, Scoble's talking, the question that they closed with, and this was the wrap-up question that Michael Arrington introduced. Does Facebook need to decide at some point if they're an application developer or platform developer? And he added, do they need to decide that to win? And that was an interesting statement in itself. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the winning or losing is founded upon, will Facebook prosper? Not does the community that is part of Facebook, the community that makes Facebook, is its user community. There's nothing about does that community prosper. He's only saying, will Facebook monetize in such a way that it gets very rich and all sorts of people can have their second .com experience. Now, Scoble's response to that immediately was said, I assume Facebook's going to turn evil just like Microsoft. At some point, they're going to see an app out there that somebody in this room builds that's so cool that they want it in the core platform, and they're going to either buy it or license it or clone it and put it in. And they might say, oh no, we're not evil like that, but the pressures sometime on somebody inside Facebook to do just that are going to be extreme, especially when it becomes a public company. So the basic presumption, the cynical experience, is these guys are going to be as happy and open and compatible as they can until they've achieved a market position where they can close the doors and reap the profits, make the revenue, satisfy the shareholders.
Exactly. To satisfy the shareholders, they just have to do that. They're no longer accountable to their developers who built the business or to the users.
Now, I found this to refer right back to an earlier statement that Dave McClure had made 27 minutes into the video, where he was saying in response to Kyle Kenneth about open sources and closing things, he made the point that open is not better. Better is better. He said it's possible that open is occasionally better because it's better, but it's not better just because it's open. I believe the phrase I said, quoting him again, a gated community with lots of great food, drink, and all my friends is a lot more interesting than a wide open, barren fucking desert. And I think, in a way, he was reflecting upon, well, you can go to Burning Man, for instance, to take an example of that, and go into cold, there'll be a lot of your friends there, and there's a lot of food and drink, and it's still a desert.
Yeah, it's not exactly the desert.
You wouldn't want to live there for long. And what he's basically saying is that the people who have built closed systems can provide much better service in many respects than others. There's no doubt about it that Windows and Macintosh, Apple, do produce much more exciting support for their buy-it-off-the-shelf, shrink-wrap programs than the open source community can generally fund and finance. So the open source world is much smaller in many ways than the commercially proprietary organized one. And he's saying that's the life. And frankly, if there's more fun over there, I'm going to that party. I don't care that it's run by a monopolist pig of some sort. It's a better party. Now, I agree.
Then better is in the eye of the beholder, i.e., Linux. Linux is much better for a lot of us than
there's all sorts of issues. But he's basically saying that if there's two theaters showing movies, and one of them shows you a great big screen full of Dolby sound, all the bells and whistles.
Oh yeah. For sure.
And the other one's just a little black and white thing flickering up against a painted wall, then you're going to get more results in one than the other. And since he's in business, he's going where people are doing business, and so he's saying, go with the platform. Don't care about whether it's technically open, technically closed, but he wants competition. Because the downside of this business about open or closed, and closed can be better because they've been able to pour more money into it, is that the closing process tends to structure towards more profit retention and management, more enclosure of the commons. Now, what he is saying about the commons of the Internet should be facilitated by intense competition between different platforms and apps to provide the users, and he means the general community of people, but also the corporate and the governmental users, the non-profits. If they're going to gain benefit from things like Facebook, Google, the networks must be kept as open, flexible, divergent, generative, creative as possible. What we want David McClure to look at is that the same statement he's making about control and competition in software and platforms apply identically to the software of our greatest social networking system, money.
But not money as they know it, Jim.
Well, quite. The world is changing. The money that we run as the one that is the great party with lots of food and drink and everybody messing around and fighting and scrambling and life is in that party, that is legal tender, conventional money, scramble for it. Do whatever you have to do to get the money. It's the way the game is played. It's the only game in town. The best money is the federal dollar, the euro, the yen, the money that the banks and the corporates and these guys create and support, and that's the stuff we deal with. It's the only game in town. Well, of course it's the only game in town. Billions of dollars have been spent to make it the only game in town. And because of the habituation of people's behavior, they see it as the only game in town. We're saying, just as open source stands in contrast to Microsoft, to Cisco, to Apple, to all of the do it our way and pay us for that privilege, we will sell you access to this facility. The Internet opened up a degree of facilitation that has encouraged the return to the original patterns of software, which was that people wrote software and made it available. Now that was blocked by the commercial processes that became, just a minute, I'll write software, you can't have it until I sell it to you. Makes logical sense in terms of financing your software development, but it screws the community. It makes for an inefficient society. It's no different from the food destruction that went on in the Depression, that food was destroyed to keep the market working. We prevented the reality that was possible to the detriment and death of thousands and thousands of people. We starved people.
When you were talking about when you were talking about conventional money and the way it works, I had a vision of that gated community that Calacanis was talking about, and the desert surrounding it full of starving people.
Yes, and which side of the wall do you want to be on? That was actually Dave McClure that cited that, but it's Calacanis would no doubt agree. Yeah, be in the place where the fun is. It's over here. It's over here because we poured billions into it, and it's very sexy and glitzy, and people are excited about it. It's the hot thing. And the same applies to monies. We have, of the 6 billion plus people in the world, probably 98% of them spend all of their time in such commercial activities, social exchanges, financial economic processes. They use conventional money. And there's a small proportion of us out there saying, well, can't fight City Hall, can't fight that show, we're not going to try and change that, but we're offering an open money. We're offering a system of supportive interactive connection that is available to everybody without being a bank or a government or a major corporation. Now they can play too, but they've got to play like people play in the creation and management and redemption of monies in the open space of open money, which is identical structurally to the open space of Internet.
So
we're at the barren desert at the moment.
20 minutes. Yeah, we've got about 20 minutes remaining, and perhaps we should talk a little bit about how people would use open money within Facebook, MySpace, Google, that sort of thing.
We could do.
Before we do that, just a note that this is Open Money on Blog Talk Radio, and I'm Ernie Jacob, and that's Michael Linton, and we're available. If you're catching this on a podcast, then our emails are mwl@openmoney.org and ey@openmoney.org. So how would people make use of this?
Actually, Ernie, what I'm going to suggest is that I don't really want to work too hard at making the case for how Facebook monetizes in specific.
No, I wasn't thinking about how Facebook monetizes.
Or anybody uses these networks. No, yeah. I don't even want to bother with that today. What I want to do is for you and I to have a conversation about what came up for you and I out of following this transcript and the video broadcast. It's more of a tactical discussion that we need to have about how do we get to somebody like Dave McClure with these words, with the words that he has spoken, and use them to get him interested in open money. The general world will be interested in open money. We're going into Facebook. That's going to happen quite soon. We're going in other directions as well. We cannot predict the behavior that people will emerge with these tools. And I don't really want to struggle with that at this point. What I want to find out is how can we attract a thinker like Dave McClure to thinking a little bit outside the box that he's living in at the moment and apply the arguments he's making on Facebook to the monetary software of the planet. That would be my interest for the next experiment.
Certainly, but it seems to me that one of the things that would attract people who are involved in these social networks, like McClure and the bloggers that we're listening to here, is how developers would make use of open money, and how people would make use of open money, and what that would look like, and how that actually makes money, and deals with the kinds of issues that people like Dave McClure are interested in. No? Okay.
No, I'm not really interested in it today, actually, Arnie. I hear you, and yeah, we can rabbit on about that and draw little pictures of how a Facebook community that was interested in this, that, and the other can attribute value to each other's contributions or discussions, can vote with each other on the rank order of these 22 propositions that are relevant to their community. Or they can functionally create an internal standard currency, a dollar, for their mutual trading. There can be a mini eBay, a multitude of mini eBays can emerge on Facebook, each one with its own economic market supported by its own internal currency, like a group of motorbike fanatics might have a community on Facebook and have their motorbike money for trading with each other. It keeps the show going and doesn't leave them dried out of exchange when they need to buy and sell from each other. Yeah, we can talk about all that, but frankly, we've done all that in different places. It's on the website. Currently, I want McClure. He's a pirate. It's a dedicated advocacy of piracy on the high seas of the cyberspace. And he's advocating that the room for pirates should be kept open in all sorts of areas. Now, can we make the case to him that there's room for a similar form of independent, self-directed piracy in the money world? You see my point?
Well, I do.
What in this conversation?
He's talking about. He talks about leveling the playing field, and
that
seems to be.
That's a good one, yeah.
And it seems to me that that's what open money does. I mean, it does do that. It levels the playing field.
Well, the fact that it is an alternative to the or a parallel, or the fact that it exists means that there is competition with the community, with the conventional money. Now, inside open money, it's a different dimension. It's a different dynamic. We do not see competition as the main driver inside an open money world. We see collaboration as the effective contextual engine driver. Because open money is available. You don't have to compete for it. In conventional money, you do have to compete for it. Now, the analogy to the discussion here about monetizing Facebook and having competition between Facebook and Google, we want to show that there is a form of opening and comparative competition that will emerge when open money stands as a challenge to closed money. It's our very existence that makes closed money potentially more honest. Regard that as quite a stretch. Closed money being honest? Well, okay. I know that there's still going to be a vicious and nasty battle goes on inside the closed money world. But it doesn't have to be the only game in town. And his point about leveling playing fields is that we have to have choices about where we play, and that those choices should make us more powerful rather than it more powerful. The whole argument here was that Facebook is effective to the extent that it stays open and attracts participation, because the participation is the energy. And the deadly thing for Facebook to do, and it may be prudent financially, but it would be deadly for its value in the longer term and its effect in the world, the worst thing they could do is close it in. Control it, gate it, tidy it, toll booth it. And they're probably going to do that at some stage. And McClure's line would be, well, let's hope somebody else comes up to keep them more honest. Google, for instance, Yahoo. There's plenty of potential entrants to this market, even MySpace. So just as he makes this case for keeping the platforms and the developers active and effective, can we not make the same argument that having monetary plurality, many currencies, will keep the governments more honest, will keep the banks more honest, will keep the interactive game more civilized, will take away the rapacious one game in town and on top of the heap and screw you ethic that seems to run our world so much these days. I want McClure to understand what he is saying applies to money as well as to Facebook. And I think we need to get into their text and voice here and say, when you juxtapose this with that, Rumford said some interesting things at 34 minutes. But look at the amount of engagement. It's about the core way that people communicate. That's what Facebook changes. And it becomes core in the way I communicate, in the way I discover information, the way I share information. So there's got to be ways to monetize it. I don't know what they are. That was his take. He sees the situation, but he doesn't understand how to make something out of it. Well, you don't have to make something out of it. You have to be in it and see that that is it. We don't monetize out of Facebook. We recognize that Facebook is a monetary vehicle in itself, if it has open money connections. That's the trick. We need to turn their heads. We don't at this point need to have thousands of people jumping into open money. We need 2 or 3 people throwing money at open money. That's the game. And McClure's got money, or access to money.
Yes. Well, don't they all? So, I guess I tend to be a little more prosaic about these things, but I look at the things that what they're talking about here, for instance, is figuring out a way to compensate the contributors to their networks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, they think
if you pay them, they will come. Can you find ways to get money from somewhere? And it's got to be from the ultimate consumer, the person who buys a tube of toothpaste at the retail drugstore, but justifies the toothpaste manufacturer's participation in Facebook because they figure that there's a tie-in between the costs of their advertising there and the result in people actually buying their product at a totally different place. If they can justify all that, then there's a cash flow. Now, can they use that cash flow in some way to pay the sneezers, the opinion leaders, the influencers on Facebook to use the right toothpaste?
And what they're missing is that people can pay each other.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, where's the money? We've got to get the money from outside here. When they're sitting in the middle of money. The whole thing is money. And it's not how do you pay the influencers and have them identifiable. It's
how do people recognize and acknowledge and support that which that which they want more of, or that which they like, or they appreciate or respect
each other. It's an internal assessment. It's an internal vitality. At 16 minutes.
Which is good for all of this, not just Facebook. It's good for Google. It's good for Yahoo. It's good for MySpace. It works any and all of these platforms. Well, in fact, they will. They will eventually use open money.
Well, the closing lines that came from the winding up of the discussion about whether Facebook would win or lose or how it works was that Michael Arrington said that well, we're saying that Facebook's pretty damn good, but we don't say it's the be-all and end-all. And then somebody threw in, I think it was Dave McClure, what's the second best platform? And Arrington, straight off the top of his head, said, well, I think the Internet is a pretty good network. You know, it was a well-judged throwaway line, which is right on the money. What Facebook is, in my view, is the best expression of what Internet makes available for social networking. It's not the end. It is currently the best. But basically, it's not about, let's make more Facebook. It's more about, let's use more of the networking that Internet makes available. Now, way back early in this dialogue, a question from the floor at 16 minutes, following up on somebody else's comment from the floor. Somebody whose name I do not know said, I think Keith's really onto something there. You've just described how members of Facebook will monetize themselves, not how Facebook itself will achieve it. He's recognizing the internal vitality of the organism, that what Facebook is its users. They've been organized, associated, facilitated by the Facebook, but the energy inside Facebook is the people who are using it. And that they will monetize themselves irrespective of what Facebook tries to do or makes it possible.
I thought that was an excellent question. Calacanis came back with the top percent of Flickr users don't get paid anything. Maybe the top big users should get paid. And then McClure says the meme comes back around. What did he mean by that? You know?
I think it was just... I think a bit of a knee-jerk line that in a way.
Okay.
The meme of paying. Yeah, well, the meme he's talking about is not a new meme. It's an old meme. It's basically, gee, if you payola, remember the old quiz shows, and you know that's something you warm something up and you pay somebody to look like they use it. It's just endorsement money. It's like Tiger Woods uses this sort of watch, that sort of camera. If you can get influencers to be paid for being influencers, hallelujah. But he's still looking outside for the money.
Exactly.
Still looking at the end beneficiaries.
Nobody answered that question, really. How members of Facebook will monetize themselves. Not how Facebook itself will achieve it.
Until at the end, at 44 minutes, just before that actually, when Scoble said that Facebook was going to turn evil like MS, Microsoft, and they were going to co-opt by licensing, cloning, and grabbing stuff and showing it off. And at 44:05, McClure came back with, it doesn't matter how they do it, if as long as it's a better environment and if there's external competition that provides a better alternative and keeps it honest. And then Scoble came back with, you can build an app that's resistant to that. And he means a co-option. You can build an app that's like a starfish and has only one tendon into Facebook. And then even if Facebook clones that tendon, does what it likes with it, it's not going to kill your business because you're actually outside and you're using Facebook. You're not inside and totally dependent and co-opted by it. Now, I think there's a conjunction between the question from the floor about how people are going to organize themselves, this line from Scoble about building resistant apps that can't be totally co-opted and enclosed and assumed and owned, and the McClure line about we've all got to be encouraging a competitive and effective process, and Arrington's closing line about I think Internet is a pretty good network. That's the mix
3 minutes remaining now, so maybe that's something for the next show.
Well, I think it's probably all we need to deal with right now. I think it's useful counter arrangement of the content. You know, when 5 people get rattling at each other in front of an audience at the end of a 3-day conference where they're absolutely pumped with ideas and intentions, you get a lot of crossover and noise. But the sort of deconstruction and extraction and projection that we've been engaging in this morning is productive, and I think it's of itself just yielded an approach that I think will take to McClure and others.
Excellent.
So I'm pretty much done with
left.
this as a conversation topic. In future conversations where we deal with things like Facebook, I think I would go for the directions that you were proposing 20 minutes ago about, let's be specific, how would people on Facebook or MySpace or through Google Maps
themselves?
How do we monetize ourselves? What does it mean to monetize ourselves? Yeah.
So that's for Friday? Are we going to do a show on Friday?
Sure. Let's talk about monetizing ourselves. How does a group? What happens when FreeCycle picks up on this? How does a neighborhood? How does an email group for dog walkers monetize itself to its
1 minute. 1 minute for an extra. I'm Ernie Jacob. You're Michael Linton. And this is Open Money on Blog Talk Radio. And we can be reached by email, mwl@openmoney.org or ernie@openmoney.org. And last word to you, Michael.
Last word is
money.
Thank you very much. It's been good. That's great. It's a good show. Catch you later.
Okay. Bye, Michael.
Hanging up.
Okay. And I'll be hanging up momentarily myself because we've just got 1 minute left. And if anybody did catch this show live, drop us a note by email, or pick it up on the podcast at blogtalkradio.com/openmoney. And I'm Ernie Jacob in the Comox Valley in Canada, and this is Wednesday. We'll be talking on Friday about how we monetize ourselves, our groups, our networks, associations. Any community, any network, any association can have its own money. We've been talking about open money and community currencies, let systems, mutual credit systems. We've been talking about that now for a couple of weeks, and we're going to keep talking about that for quite a while. Goodbye, all. Thanks for listening.